Do you ever stop to think about how you are perceived by others? Not just the first impression, but every impression you make? Sometimes what we want to portray isn't in alignment with how others see us, which is exactly what we're talking about today on The Solo Grind. Welcome to The Solo Grind, your weekly coffee break with me, Teresa Schloop, a fellow small business owner who's right there in it with you. This is where real business meets real life. No hype, just honest conversations about building life on your own terms. So grab your cup, snuggle your pup, and let's talk about what it really takes to do this thing solo. One of the questions I ask my clients the most is, how do you want to be perceived? This question takes many shapes and forms, but at the core of all the different ways I can ask it, that is what I really want to discover. How we are perceived by others shapes the success of our businesses, but how others see us isn't always in alignment with our intentions. For example, I am a very direct communicator. I process information and make decisions very quickly, and I rarely change my mind unless new information comes forward. When discussing things that require me to make a decision, I want to be perceived as someone who is knowledgeable, intelligent, and capable of making good decisions quickly, while also being seen as someone who is flexible enough to readdress things when new information comes to light. But that is not always how people see me. My direct style of communication often is mistaken as bossy, rude, inflexible, downright bitchy, and a bit of a know it all. Years ago, when I discovered this is actually how some people describe me, I was devastated because I really tried to be warm and friendly and helpful. But that isn't the impression my words or communication style were conveying. I had to learn the hard way that it's how others understand or perceive what I am saying that matters most. And this perception that others have of us, it actually unfolds over time. Yes, first impressions really do matter, and they can set the stage as to what to expect moving forward. But it is the other impressions we make over time that creates the vision of the person they think we are. So today, let's talk about those other impressions and how they shape our business. But before we go any further, let me take just a quick little moment here to introduce myself. I am Teresa Schloop, and I create branding essentials and standout website designs for small business owners. You can find out more about me and my services at caffeinecreative.io. And if it sounds like something that you're looking for, you can also book a free 20-minute consultation with me from the pages of my website. Finally, thank you so much for tuning in. If you are new around here and this is your first time, or if you pop in and join me each and every week, I love connecting with each and every one of you in this way. All right, now that introductions are over, let's go ahead and move into today's conversation. And I want to start off with first, I want us to think about, how do we want to be perceived? This is a question that we hear often as business owners, but have you ever gone deep and actually answered the question? I know it took me a while in business to really dive into this, but once I did, I was able to show up with clarity, confidence, and consistently in my business. In fact, I have discovered over the years that when consistency becomes a big struggle in my business, it's because I am lacking either clarity or confidence or both, and I know that it's time to step back, reflect, and figure out what is best for my business moving forward. Knowing how we want to be perceived is really powerful and necessary, in my personal opinion. And here are a couple of questions that I ask myself anytime I need to gain clarity or confidence in how I want to be perceived. First of all, I think about what sets me apart. I want you to think about what it is about you that is different from the others in your field. We all bring something unique to the table that helps set us apart. And understanding your uniqueness or your unique selling point, your USP, that is what helps attract your dream clients. Okay. The next question that I want you to consider is, what do you want to be known for? This is so much more than a job title. For example, I am a brand strategist and a web designer. And while I want to be known as someone who does both really well, I really truly want to be known as that person who takes the personal approach to helping you stand out online. I am that business bestie by your side, here to share a cup of coffee and a friendly ear. I am someone who gets it in terms of building your business solo and who is willing to share my own experience and lessons learned freely with my clients and my audience. That is so much more than just brand strategist, web designer. The final question that I want you to consider and that I myself consider is, when you leave the room, what do you want others to say about you? If you could list 5 character traits you would like others to associate with you, what would they be? Again, this is much deeper than the services you offer. It is that feeling and impression you leave behind when you leave the room. Now, let's talk about those impressions. As I said just a moment ago, first impressions really are important, but they aren't everything. So let's take a look at some of the other impressions we make as we work on building our business. There are the in-person impressions. And this one I want to share with a little bit of a story. Way back in my life coaching days, someone that I knew reached out to me about doing a series of workshops in her store. She had just opened the store and was looking for ways to bring in new customers and spread the word that she was opened. As our interests overlapped, it sounded like a great collaboration opportunity for both of us. I would get to connect with new potential clients as I met the customers that she brought into the workshops from her store, and she would get new customers as I brought some of my clients into her store for the workshops. So it really sounded like a win-win situation. I was so excited to meet with her and to talk about this potential collaboration, but my excitement was short-lived. I had known this person, and her first impressions with me were great, but this impression was lacking in so many ways. First, she showed up 10 minutes late and looked like she had just fallen out of bed. She spent the next 10 minutes rushing around trying to open her store and make herself, only herself, a cup of coffee. When we finally sat down to chat about a potential collaboration, she kept anxiously picking up her phone and even cut me off at one point mid-sentence to comment on a Facebook post. She was saying all the things that I would want to hear. Yeah, that sounds good. I am so excited for you to do this workshop. I think it will help bring new customers for both of us. But what her actions were saying is, I don't have time for this right now. This isn't important to me, and I would rather be anywhere else. As I am sure you can guess, I didn't feel really good about collaborating with her, and it never worked out. When we set up an in-person meeting with someone, there are some unspoken expectations in place, like showing up on time, looking presentable, and actively engaging in the conversation. When we show up frazzled, rushed, and distracted, things probably aren't going to go all that well. So, how do you make a really good in-person impression? Well, here are a few of the things that I recommend. First, prepare ahead of time. Knowing what the meeting is about and showing up ready to focus on the topic at hand is key. If you show up saying, "What are we talking about again?" you are communicating that the meeting is just not that important to you. Dress appropriately. You don't have to be in a 3-piece suit or dressed to the nines, but you do need to be dressed appropriately for the meeting it is. If you're meeting a friend for a day at the beach, a messy bun and an oversized t-shirt is totally fine. But if you're meeting a potential collaborator or a new potential client, dress like the professional that you are. Next is be on time. And I know right now, if my husband is listening to this, he is going to laugh at hearing me say the words be on time because when it comes to him and I doing things, I am more of an 8:30-ish kind of girl with a buffer of 10 to 15 minutes on either side. But when it comes to my professional reputation, I am on time. I don't show up to client meetings 5-ish minutes late. I don't arrive to in-person meetings 10 minutes late. I show up on time. Next, I want you to smile and make eye contact. Facial expressions speak volumes, and it's up to us to make sure that our facial expressions are sharing the right message. Now, here next month, we're going to have a episode all about body language and what it is saying about us with body language expert Nancy Ganzkoffer. So be sure you guys tune in for that episode. Okay, the last thing when it comes to making in person impressions is active listening. Don't focus on what you think someone is saying or start formulating a response before they are done talking. Actively tune into what they are saying and allow yourself time to process after they have spoken before you respond. Next, I want to talk about screen to screen impressions because in this digital world, Zoom meetings, Google Meet, one on one connections through the video screen is a big part of it. I know for me, 99% of my meetings are conducted screen to screen. So I want to make sure that I am making a good impression when I meet with people. There seems to be this idea, though, that when we meet with people on camera, that they aren't able to really see what's fully going on around us. And I got to tell you, they see a lot more than we realize. And again, I have another story to share with this one. About 4 or 5 years ago, I had scheduled a one on one with another person in the world of marketing. We didn't have any potential collaborations going on at that idea, and we didn't have any shared clients at the moment. But I love meeting other people whose services overlap with my own. And I love having my own little network of trusted sources and people that I can refer my clients to, and vice versa if it feels good to them. So I reached out, we scheduled a coffee meeting, and we got together through video chat, through Zoom. She showed up on time and she was ready to chat. But what I saw on the screen was honestly a lot to take in. I was so overwhelmed with what she had going on behind her. I had a hard time paying attention to this conversation. So let me set the scene. The first thing I noticed when she popped on screen was her hair was sticking up in really odd ways, and she looked really tired. Behind her was an incredibly large bookcase that was filled to the breaking point with books, papers, boxes, I don't know, all kinds of stuff. And a lot of it did not look to be all that steady. I had such a hard time tuning into this conversation, and I kept imagining all of this stuff piled up behind her, falling down and burying her in an avalanche of books and papers and debris. Finally, I was able to refocus my brain on the conversation at hand, and we just got to talking again when her cat popped in to the scene and hopped up on the shelf behind her. Now, I don't know if you have cats, but I know my cat does not find a hole she does not want to crawl into and take a nap. And so this cat was attempting to bury itself and find a napping spot on this bookcase that looked like it was going to fall over. To this day, I remember that scene behind her. I cannot tell you what we actually wind up talking about. I'm not even sure I totally remember her name, okay? But I remember the mountain of chaos behind her on the screen, and that is the impression that is lasting for me. If I were to come across her again today, I would probably recognize her by face and remember the chaos and not know what it was that she did. So screen to screen impressions really do make a difference. And when it comes to making a good screen to screen impression, for the most part, the suggestions that I have shared in person impressions apply here as well. But there are a few more that I want to add because I think they're necessary. So the first one, and this probably is obvious based on my story, clean up your background. There is no judgment here. If you thrive in a little bit of chaos, if you like a little bit of mess, embrace it. You do you. It does not bother me, and I don't want to judge you. If you were to look at my desk right now, it's a little bit messy and cluttered, and that's pretty typical. But what you see on camera is going to be neat and organized and look like a professional office. And again, this isn't me putting on airs, but this is me saying, I want to remove distractions so that we can focus on the conversation that we need to have. That's why I make sure my background is clean. The next thing that I want to encourage you is to skip the pajama bottoms. Sure, you're going to be seated for the meeting and you don't foresee any reason of why you would need to stand up and reveal you're wearing pajamas from the waist down. But things happen, and we have all seen those video Zoom horror stories when someone stands up to reveal a sight that no one can unsee. You don't want to be that person. Go ahead and dress for the meeting. You're going to feel a lot more confident when you do so. The other thing that I want to encourage you to do is to close unnecessary browser tabs. Our computers are a very busy place, always demanding our attention, and having emails and other things popping up and distracting us sends the message that we aren't interested in what that other person has to say. All right, now let's talk about social media impressions, because social media is something that we tend to think we can freely post without any repercussions. Now, not everybody thinks that. I'm over generalizing here, but I do see this happen quite often. And I recognize you may not use your personal social media accounts for business. That's okay. I used to once upon a time, and then I discovered that I really didn't like using my personal social media accounts for business, so I stopped doing it completely. That being said, it doesn't mean that what is shared on my personal account doesn't matter or won't impact my business. People who are interested in learning more about us are going to Google us, which means our personal social media accounts are going to show up in those Google searches, most likely. The images and the written posts there can be easily taken out of context, and they can hurt our professional relationship. So, here are some things that I want you to consider when it comes to sharing through social media. And I personally think these are just good practices anyway, but here's what I've come up with. First, bad mouthing an employer or a client. I actually see this happening more often than not. And these clients, I mean, you may have verifiable fact that this former employer or that last client you had was a grade A jerk. You could have all the facts in the world, but nobody sees those facts. And when you go out there blasting how awful they are on social media, it makes you look petty. It also has future potential clients or employers questioning what you will say about them if you ever have a disagreement. And so it just never puts you in a good light. Okay. Another post that I recommend avoiding is these emotionally charged posts. When you are fired up and angry about something, yes, you want to get your word out there, but those emotionally motivated posts, we just don't show up as our best selves. And we may say things that we're going to later regret. Here's the other sad thing about this. Even if you take it down because you're like, oh, that was a bad idea, I've got to take this down so that nobody can see it in the future, it can still resurface. Anyone can take a screenshot of that post and share it however they choose to do so. So, keeping your strong emotional thoughts private, keeping them to yourselves, putting them in a journal is a much better use of your time. Next, constant promotional post. Yes, social media is a great way to promote that you have a business and your services. But if all you do is try and sell to people, you are going to put out the impression that you just care about making money, and it's not going to portray the real person behind the scenes who has love and joy and wants to make people's lives better. Okay. Another one is your political opinion. Guess what? Quite a few of my clients have different political views than I do, and that is okay. They shared their views with me because they felt safe doing so, and I was very happy to listen to them and respect their position. But I don't share, especially not on social media or anywhere else, My personal political views. I am a brand strategist and a web designer. My political views do not impact the work that I do in the slightest, so I keep them out of my work. Finally, the last one is getting too personal. If you are someone who wears your heart on your sleeve and frequently shares deeply emotional struggles online and tear-felt confessions, you will more than likely discourage others from reaching out to you, especially if you aren't in a field that is focused on processing emotions. All right. Now, let's talk about email marketing impressions because these matter too. And believe it or not, here's a little known fact about me. I love signing up for email lists. Weird, I know. A lot of people avoid signing up for email lists, but I really do love signing up for new lists and seeing how other people nurture their audience through emails. Most of the time, I never hear from someone after I've signed up for their email. Other times, I'll hear from them periodically and they'll say enough to keep me engaged and on their list so that I will pop in and read what they have to share every once in a while. Sometimes I get emails that are really very confusing, and these are the ones that stand out the most and not in a good way because the message confuses me. So I want to share an example here. I recently discovered a website that offered a tool for your marketing analyzer. Okay. This tool was designed to help you determine which marketing efforts would fit your business and your strengths the best. So it sounded really cool. And I'm like, sure, I'm researching this. I want to know different ways to market myself. Let me sign up for this tool. When I got the email with the tool, it was spot on message and it really fit. And I was so excited. When I opened up the tool, it was a Google spreadsheet that I could see where it was helpful for some. It wasn't super exciting to me, but I could see the value in it. So, okay, I stayed on the list and to remain connected with her. And then I started getting the follow-up series of this email. This follow-up email series was so off course that I actually emailed back and asked if I had gotten added to the wrong list. So here's what the email follow-up series entailed. Daily messages about how I could build a thriving web design business from the ground up with her 30-day strategy. Now you may be thinking, well, Teresa, you are a web designer, so that message does seem to fit. And I don't think it's off course. But here's what you don't know. I never mentioned that I was a web designer to this particular marketer. I wouldn't have signed up to learn about her course because I already have a thriving web design business with dream clients. And I have no idea why she's telling me and selling this course to me every single day when I'm interested in her other not marketing expertise. It was a great message for the right audience, but it wasn't the message I was looking for. Which leads me to the first rule in making a great impression in email campaigns. Know your audience. Your message needs to be tailored specifically to the topic your audience is interested in. If you're an interior designer looking to attract high-end luxury clients and they sign up for your email list only for you to send them weekly emails about how to DIY your space, you've lost connection. So make sure your message is tailored to the audience receiving it. The other thing that I would recommend is to make sure that you share value and that you aren't just selling. If you really want to make a lasting impression, share value with your subscribers. Not every email has to be about making a dollar. In fact, most of mine are about building a relationship. It's the relationship that I build through my email list that turns them into clients of the future. And that for me is more valuable than anything else I could measure. Okay. Last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to making an impression, and this is kind of a big one, but I promise it won't take too long, and that is when things go wrong. As perfect as we all try to be in our businesses, things are not always going to work out as we planned them. And sometimes they are going to go really, really wrong. This doesn't make you a failure, and it also doesn't have to define who you are or how you're perceived moving forward. You can take a bad moment and turn it around all in the way that you respond. So, how do you make a really good impression when things go wrong? The first thing I recommend is take responsibility. It doesn't feel good to accept when we've screwed up, but what feels even worse is when we screw up, try to hide it, and get caught. So own it. Admit that you made a mistake. Those affected, they're not going to be happy, but they will be able to respect your honesty, and that matters. Next, no excuses. It's human nature for us to make excuses and to blame someone, anything, anyone for the issue that arose. And that's also what everybody is expecting us to do, which is why when we present a sincere apology instead of an excuse, we are making a really, really fabulous lasting impression. Finally, share how you plan to make things right. We cannot always make right decisions, but we can always make those decisions right by shifting what needs to be done and creating a plan on how to fix it. So rather than beating yourself up, focus on what happened, how you can make it better, and then communicate that with those who are involved. They are going to respect you so much more, knowing that you're taking care of them, even when things go wrong. All right, my friends, that is it for today. But I do want to leave you with one little quote that I think sums up exactly what I'm talking about beautifully. And that is this: brand is just a perception, and perception will match reality over time. Sometimes it will be ahead, other times it will be behind. This quote comes to us from Elon Musk. Love him or hate him, the man has done a lot in this world, and I appreciate his insights. That brings us to the end of this week's episode. I hope you have an amazing week, and I hope that you are out there making the impressions that matches the reality that you are creating each and every day. Until we meet again, I hope you have a wonderful and fabulous week ahead. Thanks for tuning in to The Solo Grind. I hope this episode brought you some inspiration and encouragement. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, and feel free to share it with a friend. For more tips and insights, visit caffeinecreative.io to check out my blog or explore the Solo Grind Central, my free resource library. Find me on Facebook or Instagram. And I'd love to hear how this episode has helped you.